Albion takes on Kelvin this week, the last game for both of these teams. Albion coming off of a very high explosive, just high scoring affair win over Olivet. Kelvin coming off of a dominant performance against, come on. Albion takes on Kelvin at home this weekend, the last time both of these teams will play this year. You have Albion coming off of a very high-scoring, high-offense affair win against Olivet. You also have Kelvin coming off of a performance that offensively and defensively, they did not have a very good performance. They ended up losing 52-0 against their rival Hope. So obviously two teams coming in with a little bit of different mindsets, a little bit of different results last week. And speaking of results and speaking of really good performances, especially for Albion, you have to give Braden Frakashi a ton of credit last weekend. He had one touchdown run, one touchdown catch, and a punt return as well for a touchdown. He had an incredible performance. I think he's going to be a guy that you're going to see Albion try to get involved a little bit more. Only had one carry, only had one catch, but when you have that and you just have the explosiveness that he has, I think Albion needs to figure out ways to get him more involved. And you have a couple other guys that you can see getting involved a little bit in this game coming up against Kelvin. I think Dylan Dennison's going to be one guy who had a decent performance last week. Cameron Moore is going to be another guy. Connor Davey has been getting involved a little bit as well. So I think there's a few guys going into this game that has a little bit of momentum. I think there's a few guys that could be truly guys to watch out for. Obviously, Albion's starting quarterback in the last game is Davis Crossman. Had a pretty good game last week. I think he's going to be a guy that will probably be the starter again this week. He's been kind of the starter the last couple of weeks ever since really taking over as a freshman. He has 4 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Obviously, as a freshman, kind of getting the starts the last 4 weeks, there's not a ton of expectations on him, which I think is going to be completely fine, especially going into this game. This is going to be your last home game of the year. It's going to be a last game against a defense that, for Hope, were able to throw the ball effectively in this game. And this is a Kelvin defense that I was a little surprised by just how efficient Hope was. I thought Hope was going to be really efficient. I do think that this Kelvin defense as a whole is pretty solid. Obviously, I've mentioned a few guys in the past that have been really different makers, especially at the linebacker position for Kelvin. But this is a Kelvin team, like I mentioned, that's coming off of giving up 52 points in the last game. Again, to one of the best teams, if not the best team in the MIAA. Albion is definitely not that. So I think this is going to be a game that's going to be really fun. I think it's going to be a game that's going to be really competitive. This is a Kelvin offense that when they run the ball, which they have been able to when they've won, they are going to be able to put up points. This is an offense that has put up 32 points per game. A lot of it has been on the ground, but Thomas Vaquero still has been efficient through the air. And this is an Albion defense that has given up a lot of points. They gave up over 40 points to Olivet. Now, Olivet, I think, is pretty good offensively. I think they have weapons, but I also think this is going to be one of those games that's going to be very high-scoring, very fast-paced. I think it's going to be one of those games that it's going to be probably pretty close to what the Albion-Olivet game ended up being. I think it's going to be a high-scoring, not much defense played in. If that's your type of football, I think that's exactly what you're going to get in this one. You're going to probably get mistakes. I think if you have to really point out one position that I think Kelvin has a little bit of an advantage to, and experience-wise is a big part of it, is the quarterback position. At Thomas Vaquero, he's been doing this longer. He's not a freshman. He's been the starter for Kelvin all year long. I think Hunter Hogan is also a little bit of advantage as well. I think if you just look at the offense that Kelvin has compared to the offense that Albion has, I think you're feeling a little bit more comfortable, at least when it comes to experience-wise, for Kelvin, just because of Hunter Hogan, Thomas Vaccaro, Luke Mitchell-Hugen. I think there's just multiple guys that you can truly rely on for this Kelvin offense in this game. But I think there's also guys on offense for Albion that you can rely on as well. Like I mentioned, there's a couple of guys that have been big contributors last game. I think will be big contributors in this game. So it's going to be one of those games that you're almost going to be like, what defense can force turnovers? What defense can get stops? This is a Kelvin team that has done a pretty decent job overall protecting the football. This is an Albion team that, like, one of his first starts as a freshman quarterback, he threw 4 interceptions. Obviously, he's been a little bit better since then, but this is a Kelvin team that if they can force turnovers, or if this is an Albion team that can force turnovers, that's going to be something that can truly make the difference in this type of game. But you have Kelvin right now that is basically square in kind of the spot that they are. Albion's obviously looking for a way to end the season for the seniors, to end it on a positive note. Kelvin's doing the same exact thing. Kelvin has the ability to get to 7 wins this year and to go from what they had last year to 7 wins this season. I think that would be obviously not only huge for them this year, but also huge for the momentum that they have going into next year. And then Albion on their end, they've won 3 games this year, and they're coming off of one of those wins. They have a capability and an opportunity to get a second conference win, to go 4-6 on the year, which I think if you ask a lot of these Albion players, probably wasn't exactly where they wanted to be at this point. But if you end the season on a win, that's going to obviously build momentum going into the offseason. You obviously want to have your last year go out with a win for your seniors. And I know Kelvin wants to do that exact same thing. Like I mentioned at the beginning, there are going to be 2 teams that are not going to be playing in the playoffs. That's just not the case. I think both teams are going to be completely fine with the win. Both of these teams have played teams close that, like Kalamazoo, for example, was a really, really close game. Trine was a really, really close game. Both of these teams have been close. It's just that Kelvin has been able to overcome and get wins, and then Albion has been kind of falling a little bit short. So because of that, I have Kelvin winning this game. I think it's going to be one of those games that's probably going to be a 3.7 point win. I think it's going to be a 1-possession win for Kelvin. I do think Albion will have opportunities in this game. I think Albion will maybe possibly make some mistakes. I think this is just going to be a great learning experience. I think this is going to be a growth opportunity for Albion. I also think it's going to be a growth opportunity for Kelvin to see exactly what they have going into next year. But I think it's going to be a really, really fun game. I think it's going to be a high-scoring, high offensive affair, and it wouldn't surprise me if Albion wins this game, especially because it is at their home field. So I think it's going to be a close one. I think it's going to be a fun one. I think it's going to be a good one. It's going to be about what team can respond from what happened last week. Will Albion respond with a win, have a little bit of momentum, be excited for this one, or will Kelvin come out from last week and be upset and just come out and want to get off to a fast start? Because I can see a team wanting to do that, or I can see a team responding from last week saying, hey, this is our last game we're going to play this year, and don't play very, very well. So it's going to be about how do you respond from both of these teams last week. Is Albion going to be able to continue that momentum? Will Kelvin be able to respond from it? We'll see on Saturday, and I'll obviously recap that game as well. That will be out later this week, early next week, so make sure to tune into that. But if you enjoyed this content, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, comment, all that kind of stuff. I will talk about this game after it happens, but make sure to tune in to that recap as well.